Welcome back to the Light and Life podcast, conversations on faith and life in downtown Colorado Springs. I'm your host, Liza, here again with Pastor Tim. Hi, Pastor Tim.
Hey, Liza. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Here we are in like our fake kitchen.
I know. It's kind of funny.
Studio here.
It'd be funny if we had, like a chef back here cooking or some sort of background.
We should do that.
I know. Sometime. Maybe we should eat a meal during one of these.
Like we talked about attention, how the bear could like dance around behind us.
That'd be so good. Yeah.
Or just have a chef back here making eggs.
One time I remember watching this YouTube video. I think it was in class or something when I was in high school, where you were told to pass the basketballs.
Yeah.
You know the video I'm talking about?
Yeah, we talked about that
yes,
on an earlier
but
podcast.
a gorilla is walking by.
Like pass count how many times the basketball is going by. And there's a gorilla dancing through the middle of it that you just don't even ever see.
Yeah, I remember feeling so embarrassed and being like, no, I saw it. I just didn't.
So if you were watching, if you're listening, you have no idea what we're talking about. But if you were watching on YouTube, you would see the dancing gorilla right now.
Yeah, he's huge. He's scary. It's actually Chris Cullens, and he's pulling. He has a mask on. Yeah. And we're just kidding. But today, the last few episodes, we tackled poverty and homelessness. And so today, our topic is quiet time. What is it? Where did that idea come from? How do you do it?
Yep.
So, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so this is dipping into June. It's kind of like it's a time I just always think of June as a good time to sort of simplify and relax and I don't know. I just always feel like it's a season to breathe deeper and rest by the pool and just enjoy sort of summer days and so I thought, okay, you hammered like a super hard topic at me on poverty. Mm-hmm. So I thought, my turn. Yeah. Easiest thing in the world to talk about. Maybe it is.
For an extrovert, is quiet time.
Should a Christian read the Bible and pray regularly? But it is a thing. It is a thing.
Yeah, and mindfulness is, super popular. Quieting, centering. You hear a lot of people saying like, I didn't get my quiet time this morning and that's why I'm cranky, right?
Yeah.
I guess quiet time for me looks like waking up, doing my, having morning coffee, of course, and then sitting. My boss actually does something called her morning 15, and it's just spend 15 minutes, with Jesus.
With Jesus. So, when people say, I didn't get my quiet time, so I'm grumpy, are you talking about Christian friends? Or has quiet time also become a bigger term that people talk about just having like their centering time or their mindfulness time?
I think it's twofold. I think there's, I do have my Christian friends who, when they say quiet time, in my head, I associate that with like a morning devo, maybe listening to some worship, journaling.
Okay.
But non-Christian friends as well, they need just some time to themselves to, first of all, gain consciousness from being, asleep, but to just sit, reflect, and I don't know how to really articulate centering yourself, but truly centering themselves before entering the work day or even having their first interaction with someone.
There's just the pace of life that we're in that I think everybody feels. That there's there's this old proverb about sort of an adventurer going through, I think it was Africa with a set of guides, and he said, okay, time to get up and go. And the guides wouldn't get up, and they wouldn't get up, and he said to the sort of chief guide, what are you doing? It's time to go. We need to keep going, keep moving. And the guide turned to him and said, we're waiting for our souls to catch up with our bodies.
Whoa.
And right. Well,
okay.
But it gets passed around just sort of as this idea of like, we're just running. Sometimes we're running very, very fast. And it feels like I just need a minute to just let my soul catch up with my body. Just like come into myself again. And I think people do refer to it as, there's that parlance of centering, which I can understand. I mean, I just, when someone says that, I know that it comes from a different school, a different philosophy, a different idea about what it means to be spiritual than I would know as a Christian. But at the same time, I can totally resonate and connect and say, yeah, I understand the need for that feeling, right?
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I do think, personally, I experience a difference in my whole day when I do set aside that time, whether it's time with the Lord or not. Yep. Because sometimes I do have time that's just, me sitting.
Breathe time,
eating my breakfast, no distractions. No one talked to me. No one's bothering me. I'm not looking at my email, right?
Yeah.
But I do notice a difference in my day, whereas when I roll out of bed and I'm rushed and I immediately look at my computer of all the things that I have to get done.
Yeah.
I notice that there's almost less time the less time to get my tasks done, the earlier I start my day. But the earlier I start my work day, I should say.
Okay.
But when I sit down and I center myself, and, listen to worship music, journal, pray, read scripture, read any kind of reading. Right now I'm working through the Blue Book by Jim Branch, which the way that looks is it's they have daily verses listed out for the week. So it's a week, it's separated by weeks. Okay. So any given week would look like they have daily scripture, it has an opening prayer, it has a song of the week, or it could be some sort of hymn, and it has daily readings, and then it has like a closing prayer. So I would do like the daily reading, listen to the song while I'm making my breakfast or something, and then a closing prayer. Yeah. And I feel like I have all the time in the world to conquer the day. But if I wake up and immediately check my email and my desk, for those of you who don't know, I work hybrid, so I'm part-time in the office, part-time at home. Mm-hmm. My desk, because I am a renter and I rent with 3 other roommates, so it's in my room. There's not a separate workspace for me.
It's just like roll from.
So as soon as I get out of my bed, I can hop right there onto my desk. And if I do that, the day almost never ends. It feels like it's never ending. There is no rest.
Yeah, right.
But if I start with something restful, I feel like I can tackle the day in a way that is kind of indescribable. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, when I came to Christ as a teenager, as a 12-year-old, one of the first things that someone talked to me about was, okay, how do I keep this relationship with Jesus going? And one of the first things was this idea, this term, well, you should start having a quiet time. You should start having a quiet time daily to be with Jesus. And, it can become legalistic, and I think the term itself, some people don't like the term anymore because of the way it's been used. That was like what we talked about when I was a young Christian. Was you should have a quiet time. You should have a time spending time with Jesus every day, reading the Bible and praying. And it was just this idea that if you love someone, you want to spend time with them and you want to talk with them. And you don't just talk to them, which is a way of thinking about prayer, that you're talking to, but you also want to hear from them, which would be you want to read the Bible, hear from the Lord through His Word, and also spend some time meditating and spiritually listening. But it's not so much about self-benefit as it is about keeping that relationship going with Jesus.
It's interesting that you bring up the idea of it becoming legalistic, because I actually had to write myself a little note at the end of my Bible, because there's, a yearly reading plan where you check off the little boxes of, okay, I read this.
Right.
And I realized that I started I was doing it to check off the boxes to like make myself feel better rather than to like feed my spirit
Right.
or to grow in relationships. So I had to physically write down a note that says like, don't read to check the boxes. Like,
Yeah.
don't have a quiet time to just check the box of having a quiet time. Do it so that it's out of love. It's out of wanting to get to know a person. I mean,
Yeah.
like you said, if you love someone, you want to spend time with them. And so rather than I want to spend time with them just so, all my ducks are in a row.
Yeah.
Rather
So I'm
than
proving something, or all my ducks are in a row, I'm doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the relationship. And any relationship, no matter how much you care for somebody or love somebody, if you don't spend time together, if you don't make it a priority to spend some time together and have conversation, and that relationship is going to suffer.
Right.
So, I think it is helpful. I've always heard that it's kind of like entering a different world for a minute. You enter into that relationship with Jesus for a minute. You put your attention there, your prayer, and I've always heard that if you want to keep up with playing piano, playing a little bit of piano every day is better than sitting down and playing in 1 hour at the end of the week, because it just gets your mind into that place of playing piano, and you need it more regular. And I think in our spiritual life we do that. Like same with languages, speaking a little Spanish every day is better than like, I haven't spoken Spanish in forever, so I'm going to speak Spanish for 2 hours once a month. And we do that with our relationship with Jesus, and it actually would be so much better just to have a little time every day with him than just to be like, ooh, I've got this huge deficit. Now I'm going to go spend 2 hours with Jesus and try to make up for it.
And I'll say I've done that before, and it is hard.
Yeah.
Because then you're just sitting, this is funny. I had a weekend where I was supposed to go to Steamboat Springs, and I was supposed to meet someone there for work, but plans shifted, and I ended up being there alone. And that is an extrovert's nightmare. Like, I so badly want to be with people constantly, but it ended up being a good thing because I was able to, I guess, change my mindset of like, oh, this will be reflective. I'll catch up on my time with the Lord.
Okay.
So you're sitting there alone and you're like, oh, I get in my head a little bit. I'm like, oh, I need 4 hours or something because
I'm going to get a deep spiritual insight.
I'm going to hear something. I'm going to learn something. It's going to be so good.
Yeah.
And then I ended up getting frustrated because I'm like, why am I not there spiritually? I don't know what this bar, when I say there, listeners, I'm doing air quotes, but I don't know what that there is or what it looks like. But there's times where I just don't feel like I'm there.
Yeah.
So
honestly, those longer, because those are healthy too. I'm going to actually spend some time doing that this summer while I'm on sabbatical, some spiritual retreat, some silent retreat, and I think those, I have a hard time with those too. I mean, it's a huge challenge to stop entirely and really sort of wait on God. But I do know that those go so much better when you're not coming into it with this huge deficit, but you've had a regular time with Jesus, and now you're taking this intentional longer time.
Right.
But I was hit, I remember, I think I was in college when I heard John Ortberg talk about this, that it did become like the QT, the quiet time, became this little bit of Christian legalism, that a way that we would sort of peck at each other as Christians. Are you really walking with Jesus? Are you not walking with Jesus? You'd have this sort of like, how's your walk with the Lord? And in the best of cases, it was meant in the best spirit. But sometimes it was like, are you really on it or not?
Yeah, like, it feels like a leading question a little bit.
And the answer was, the first thing you thought that would come in your head was, well, how many times did I hit my quiet time this week? And John Ortberg talked about that. He said, I just had to change my mindset, that the first thing that would come into his head was, oh, I only did 3 quiet times this week. I guess I'm not walking with the Lord. But he remembered that the chief command of Jesus is to love God and love neighbor. It's the sum of all the commandments, and everything else that we're trying to live into hangs off of that. And so he said, what I really need to respond with is, how am I doing at loving God? How am I doing at loving my neighbor? And anytime anything in the Christian life can become legalistic. You can just use it to beat yourself up or beat other people up, and that's not what we want.
Mm-hmm. I realize that sometimes when those questions are asked of me, I get super defensive. Like, how do I prove to them that like I am a Christian and I love the Lord so much? How do I prove to them? And that's not what it's about at all. And a lot of times they are asking in good faith. They're asking like, how are you doing? Like, how can I be there? How can I support? But that's not where my mindset goes. My mindset goes, oh my gosh, they see right through me.
Yes, you're dealing with your own constant imposter syndrome and fear of hypocrisy, and your own psychology sets in of, my wife Abigail, and she's a bit of a perfectionist type, and so for her, this term became something that, like when I told her we were going to do a quiet time one, she was like, oh no, because for her that term has been kind of a hard thing because she judges herself and her performance. And that's not what it's about at all. It is a good practice, a healthy practice, and you just don't want to let it become a legalistic thing. Okay, so Jesus modeled it. I put in the notes here, Mark 1:35. Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. It doesn't have to be early in the morning while it was still dark, but that is a nice time to connect. And like you said, sometimes it's the first thing that goes in the deepest. So to connect with Jesus first is a great way to start a day. But Jesus would regularly withdraw and pray and go be with the Father.
Yeah, and I think, when you say the morning is a good time to do that because there's not many distractions. I have a lot of friends who do it in the evening as they're winding down and they're reflecting on their day rather than like preparing for the day. But that kind of ties into, I guess our last episode you touched on Sabbath and simplicity a little bit.
Yes.
And it kind of makes me think about how when in the creation story, when God, was creating all that is, he rested, and it wasn't because he needed it, right?
He
it's
wasn't
like
tired.
Right. It's like to set an example for his people, but you could also look at it as, is Sabbath an end of the week, like to rest from the week prior, or is it something to prepare you to move forward?
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool because you could do your quiet time. You could look at it that way as morning or night. Is it in preparation, or is it as, reflective and healing?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's an interesting topic how because of the resurrection of the Lord on the first day of the week, the first day became our Sabbath. And that kicked off the week where it used to be the last day, the seventh day, but then in the Hebrew mindset, the day began with sunset. So I don't know if you know that, but so like, so like for even today, for Jewish people who are observant, Sabbath begins with nightfall on Friday night and goes into Saturday until nightfall on Saturday night. So it's just anyway. That's a rabbit trail.
Yeah.
But when you became a Christian, did anybody talk to you about having a quiet time?
They did, and I think I would. It's funny that you mentioned Abigail, like around the word quiet time. It's just kind of triggering. It's interesting because I had never really heard of the idea, I guess, until college in this small group that I was in. It was like... No, you're good. It was like I would hear people talk about quiet time, and in my brain, I'm just thinking like, what is that?
Yeah, did you go sit in the dark with your...
Yeah, it was just kind of a foreign idea to me, and it's not that I wasn't aware of what praying or, doing a devotional or any of that was. It's that I had never really heard it referred to as quiet time. And then it turned into, one of those things that it was like, oh, I want to be a good Christian. And that's how these other people who I view as good Christians are obtaining that. So it turned into something that I would judge myself on. Like, I have to have this morning box checked. But because I was so repetitive in it, it actually turned into, at first, the intention behind it wasn't great. It was more of like, so that it was like a personal goal of like, I am this perfect Christian, or I'm going to become this perfect Christian, and I'm going to be viewed as this perfect Christian. Yeah. My intentions actually evolved, which is a really cool thing to see. Because I was doing it, it actually turned into like a curiosity to dive more into it out of want than out of need. Or
which isn't that...
Not need. I mean, of course I need it, but out of want rather than like this...
A drive to...
Yeah, this weird expectation that I've set for myself that is like, feels impossible to achieve. Yeah.
Which is so, the good things in life of being a disciple of Jesus. Disciple is related to discipline. Like you got to push yourself to do things that you weren't doing before, and then eventually they actually start to feel like something that you need, that you're patterned into, you're hungry for, and so there is that. It's just that it's just avoiding that shame and that shame cycle of beating yourself up for some legalistic thing, and as if I'm going to be loved by God more if I do more quiet times or something. No, God loves you 100%. There's no more that's coming on the back of your good behavior, but there is a lifestyle, and there is a shaping, and there is a discipleship of Jesus that comes with some of these intentional patterning of our life. But so if somebody wanted to do it, I just thought I grabbed this because when I became a Christian, I was given a little pamphlet.
I love it.
Have you see these things used to exist called pamphlets?
Okay.
And
all right.
And
all right.
And this was so long ago. But this was put out by Nav Press, and they still put it out. And this is literally like the same design and everything. 7 Minutes with God, How to Plan a Daily Quiet Time. And so I was a new Christian, and I was very dutiful and very literal. And so it said 7 minutes with God. And one of the things it said was, if you've been getting up at 6:30, change your alarm to 6:23. And take that time to have your 7 minutes with God.
Oh, so I love it.
I can totally remember my radio alarm clock going off at 6:23 because I literally, I changed my alarm from 6:30 to 6:23 so I could have 7 minutes with God.
I love that so much. It's funny that, listeners who can't see what's going on, he gave me one of these pamphlets, and the first thing that caught my eye is the back, which is exactly what we were just talking about. Okay. It says, do it not because other men are doing it.
Or women.
Not as a spiritless duty every morning, nor merely as an end in itself, but because God has granted the priceless privilege of fellowship with himself. That's beautiful.
Yeah. Covenant with him to guard, nourish, and maintain your morning watch of 7 minutes. So
I'm imagining alarm goes off, you hit it, like an early 2000s coming of age movie, where it starts with the hand slapping the alarm and then immediately turning and like
going straight to the Bible.
Yeah, you have no like, let me wake up and wash my face, nothing. It's just like immediate pamphlet.
Because I got 7 minutes, so I'm going to get on it.
Okay.
And actually, they break it down a little bit differently than I would these days, I guess. But I don't know. Let me go with theirs. I'm going to go with theirs. Okay. So 7 minutes. They suggest half a minute, prayer for guidance. So I would just say, like at the beginning, open up in prayer. And then, they did it the same way that I was talking about it. Yeah. 4 minutes of reading the Bible. Again, it's better to dip in than to let it go, and then you've got this huge sense of deficit. Mm-hmm. Like, you need to hear God's voice, and just starting your day knowing that you've heard God's voice in the Scripture. If you're a new believer, I would say start with one of the Gospels Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John, because you really want to hear Jesus. You really want to see Jesus. If you want to know who God is, look at Jesus. And so when you read the Bible, you're just going to do a quick reading of the Bible, 10 to 12 verses. Here's 4 questions that you can ask. What does it say? I mean, just stop and ask, what does it say? Ask as much as you can, what did it mean in its own context? Like, what do I think Jesus was saying to those people when he said that? Mm-hmm. And then ask, what does it mean to me? Because the Bible is alive and it's speaking to you today. And what should I do in response? So 4 minutes, read 10 or 12 verses, ask those 4 questions, and then take 2 minutes to pray. And the old sort of model, I forget what it's called when you use letters like this. Do you remember what that's called?
Anagram. Not anagram.
It's an anagram.
What is it? Anyone? Phone a friend?
Phone a friend. Anyway, ACTS. ACTS. Adoration, confession, thanksgiving, supplication, that's a big word. But adoration, you just say, Lord, you are praiseworthy, you are awesome, you are holy, you are good. Just praying who God is. Thank you, Jesus, for being who you are. Confession. Lord, I'm sorry for the ways that I have walked away from you or turned from your love. Thanksgiving. Lord, thank you for the gifts of my life. Gratitude is so important. And then that word supplication means asking for what you need. And so it's a great pattern, 7 minutes, and it's a good way. So I tried it a while, and I had my alarm going off at 6:23, and then, as you said, I pivoted to doing it at night, and I remember that, and that was actually when it grew for me. I would go longer at night than I did in my 7 intense minutes. Uh-huh. So I've tried a lot of different patterns, and I think in different jobs I've had, some jobs, it was easier for me to do it when I first got to work, and I would just take my first 10, 15, 20 minutes at my desk, and especially when the home was full of screaming babies and kids, like that was where I needed to meet with God, was when I got to work. Time in the car with the radio off. There's been a lot of different patterns. For me right now, it's the YouVersion Bible app, and I just keep following the 1-year Bible with Nikki Gumbel, and I just have not gotten off of that. But I've had a lot of different things through the years of walking with Jesus, where you said, this is getting dry, this is getting hard. I think I just want to pivot, try something else, and So what do? You mentioned the Blue Book right now?
The Blue Book. There's a few other things that have been suggested to me that I've tried that have been really nice. Actually, there's an app called Lectio 365. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but they have a morning and a night devotional. So some people like to do both or one or the other. A dear friend of mine introduced me to something called the Pause app.
Okay, yeah.
Where throughout the day, you can actually make it set reminders. I've been in a meeting and my phone will go off and I'll be like, it's time for your pause.
You just tell everybody in the meeting?
Yeah. Well, sometimes I do because it's a good introduction to what I'm about and what I believe in. But
yeah, that's cool.
The Pause app, if you aren't open to something a little cheesy, maybe stay away from it, because it is a little bit cheesy, but it's a guided meditation, and if you really lean into it, it's actually very helpful.
Yeah.
And it always starts with, Jesus, I give everyone and everything to you.
Neat.
It starts with complete surrender, reflection, and thankfulness, and I just love it. And you can have it set to several times throughout the day.
Cool.
Yeah, it is cool. Well, folks, I think that about wraps up our time. Thanks so much for joining us this time. Be sure to join us next time on the Light and Life podcast. We're excited to have you.